Hi, I'm your host, Laura Nichols, and this is a note from your coach from me, Queen of the Pivot, to you, badass human. This show is designed as a quick dose of unfiltered motivation to empower you to create the life you want to be living, one of authenticity and alignment. It investigates the power of the pivot and helps create understanding of the human journey, all while sharing tales of pivots from my sometimes ridiculous human experience, as well as my 20 years of experience in working with other humans on growth and change. If you are interested in leveling up your life, stay tuned. A note from your coach starts now. Hello, my loves. I am Laura Nichols, known as Queen of the Pivot, and you are listening to Notes from Your Coach on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with me for the next hour, and I'm going to ignite your life with unfiltered motivation. Each first and third Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard, I'll be discussing some small but potent nuggets of truth from my book, Notes from Your Coach, to help you create the life you want to be living. So each week we steal a quote from the book and then we talk about it. And this week, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what quote I really wanted to focus on. And a lot of times my own life really informs not just my work, but like my creative work as well. And so while writing this book, it had a lot to do with my journey, building a business, and even currently now, just sort of the feelings that are coming up in business for myself, as well as a lot of my clients and what they're bringing to me. So if you're not listening to this right when it comes out, we're sitting about the end of October, beginning of November, and it's a really interesting time. You're getting towards the end of the year. Here where we are, it's fall, and things are starting to get chilly. I'm in North Carolina, and it's sort of like you're like ramping up for the holidays while already feeling fatigued because it's the end of the year. And so it's just an interesting sort of flavor. Plus, here in the United States, you also have the election coming up. And so there's a lot of bizarre energy in the air with an over abundant feeling of sort of getting kind of tired here, right? And so when I was looking at this week, I pulled out a quote that really spoke to me and sort of where my clients have shown up in the last couple of weeks and as far as myself goes. And so the quote that we're going to be looking at this week is, "You've put too much work in to let up now." And I really wanted to bring this up now because of that feeling of, it's the end of the year. Maybe I just kind of want to like phone it in until the new year comes. But this is the challenge, right? We still have 2 months left, right? We still have November and December. So to let up now, you're giving away 2 months of your time. And so I really wanted to dive into what it would happen if you sort of like just gave up on your goals now, right? So the first part of this, what we're going to be talking about, is what happens when you hit the wall, right? It's going to be really tempting to like stop. And we're going to break down what it actually costs us if we let ourselves stop now. This isn't just about the work that you'll lose out on. It's about the mental and emotional toll of letting up when you're really already deep in the game. So let's unpack it all. Let's talk about the reasons we consider quitting, what happens in our minds when we do, and why pushing through might really be the best decision for us. And I want to start out by really setting the foundation that when I'm talking about pushing through and digging deep and working towards our goals, I am doing it with the idea of, first and foremost, above all else, that these goals, who you are and what you want and what your values are, right? Because if we're pushing through, but something about our life has changed and it's time to make a pivot, then we're not going to keep going in a direction that no longer works for us, right? So this is with the idea that we've already sat and really thought about, yes, this is still what I want. This is still the life I want to be creating. These are still the goals I have for myself. Okay. So you've done that work here and you know that this is the direction you want to go. So with that said, let's get into it. So we feel like giving up sometimes because burnout is a real thing, right? It's an unwelcome guest at any high achievers party. Um, you set out with fire in your belly and you're like excited to go. You have all these ideas of what you want to do. And then at some point, you just get tired, right? Our society really glamorizes the hustle, the rise and grind culture, the like, let's go. But we really don't talk about what happens when we are also grinding ourselves down. So let's normalize this, right? It's really normal to want to quit when you're exhausted, especially when you're running on fumes, right? It's not a flaw. It's a reminder that you are actually, in fact, a human, right? You're not a machine, right? So we can't necessarily avoid burnout, but the most important thing we can do is start to recognize it early. So checking in with yourself and finding ways to recharge while you push forward. You know, going back to when I was a school counselor and I ended up with my own case of burnout, which I've talked about before. I wasn't paying attention to the clues that I was burning out. I was just going on fumes upon fumes upon fumes until it actually became a medical need for me to take a break from my job. And so burnout is real and it's a really important thing to look for the signs of. So, another reason that we feel like giving up is that we're afraid of failure, right? Like, let's get real about it. A lot of times we make decisions based on a fear. And if our fear is failure, we have this idea that all the work that we've put in up to this point might not pay off. You know, you've done the work. You've, especially if you own a business, you have put everything into it. You know, you have like me, maybe quit your job or you're working nights after working days. You've put off time with the people you love to give into this. And then all of a sudden, there's a little voice in your head that's like, maybe it's really not going to work. If you're a small business owner, that's something that you face on the regular, right? That's why a lot of people end up failing because they give into that fear. You don't want to invest time, sweat, or energy into something and then come up empty handed. No one wants to do that. So the fear says quit now and you won't have to find out if you're going to fail, right? Like you don't even get the choice to see if you're going to fail because you just stop. Fear is like a terrible fortune teller, though. It's a friend who's like super pessimistic and it's just there to keep you from stepping out of your comfort zone, not because you're destined to fail. It's just keeping you safe, right? And that's what our brain is trained to do, is to keep us safe. So if we look at fear as a signal that you're onto something that's worth pursuing rather than a signal that you need to stop, it really is a game changer. So as you're getting tired, as you're starting to feel that nagging thought in your head and it's getting louder and louder, like you're just, this isn't right, you're gonna fail, right? I really want you to stop and think about it as a signal that you're on the right path, right? And again, going back to what I originally said, this is with the caveat that you have done the work and know that the goal that you have is still in alignment with you, is still in tune with your energy, is still in tune with your values, and it's still something you want to do. So fear isn't a reason to stop. Really, it's a sign that you're really moving towards something real and something big and something that could be incredibly impactful. Um, and I also want to note that as I'm talking through all of this is for me as well, because it is the, quarter four of the year for business. And it is this place where you feel like you're sprinting, but you don't have a lot to give, right? So I also want to talk about stagnation, right? This is that little stealthy villain in the story of why people quit. It's the moment when they're putting in the work and you're questioning if you're making any real progress. It's like riding on a treadmill, like your legs are burning, but are you actually getting anywhere? It's where a lot of people throw in the towel because they just feel like they're not moving. It's not because they're necessarily exhausted, but they've sort of lost sight of their purpose. So stagnation isn't failure. It's really, let's like flip the script and look at it as a pause, a moment to realign. Am I headed in the right direction? Do I need to do a little tweak, right? These are where those little pivots come in, right? So instead of stopping, you want to consider using stagnation as a checkpoint. Are we still headed where we want to go, or is it maybe time to adjust? So here's the thing, by stopping, it really throws a wrench into the whole thing. The hardest part about quitting is regret. right? People rarely tell you that quitting doesn't really make your fears or doubts go away. It just replaces them with something a lot heavier, which is regret. So it's like that thing where you imagine looking back and thinking, man, I could have gone further, but I didn't. That's a whole different weight to carry than just being tired or feeling stagnated. When you stop, you're left wondering what could have happened if you'd pushed through a little longer. Regret doesn't just haunt you, it grows over time, reminding you of what might have been. Quitting feels like an immediate relief, kind of like procrastination, but that relief fades, leaving you with an itch that you just can't scratch. And here's the thing, momentum is super important. So when people say the hardest part is starting, that really is the case. Because if you think about like a car or anything that needs to be made to go into motion, it's that initial push that is difficult, that rocket ship with the rocket fuel of getting it in the air. But once you're in the groove, you're in a rhythm. Each step builds on the last, right? Consistency. So you're creating a psychological momentum that's hard to gain, but really easy to lose. So stopping isn't just putting a project on pause, it's hitting the brakes on months or even years of effort. If you ever decide to come back, it's not as simple as picking up where you left off. I want you to think about maybe a habit that you started to incorporate, which was like walking every day or working out every day, right? That first initial jolt to get it going, and then you were moving. And then at some point, maybe you stopped. Well, getting back into the groove, the momentum is difficult, right? And not only that, but when you do stop, every time you stop doing something, because you're tired or you're feeling stagnant or you're starting to feel burnout, you lose confidence in yourself. When you quit, your confidence is just chipped away. It subtly rewrites the story that you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of, right? So instead of seeing yourself as someone who pushes through, you might start seeing yourself as someone who almost did it. And over time, the almost narrative is what sticks. And it makes it really hard to fully commit to your goals in the future because in the end, you see yourself as a quitter. You see yourself as someone who doesn't finish things. So many times with my clients, that's what I see. So every time you walk away, you reinforce the idea that maybe you really just can't do it. It's not really about one project or one goal. It then becomes about the belief that you can see things through even when it's tough. And if you can, and if that's the case. So when you're already there, you just got to keep going. Let's just be super real. You put the serious effort in, the cost of quitting will almost always outweigh the temporary relief of giving up. Sure, pushing through isn't a cakewalk, right? But quitting leaves you with a bag full of what ifs or I could have's. Think about it this way. The closer you get, the more valuable the effort you've already invested becomes. So throwing in the towel near the end isn't just stopping, it's kind of wasting everything you've already been given. If you're halfway up the mountain, there's no sense in turning back when you're closer to the top than you think. So let's reframe the struggle. Instead of interpreting the struggle as a signal to stop, start seeing it as evidence that you're right where you need to be. Progress isn't always a straight line, right? Struggle isn't a red flag, it's a green light. We're going to wrap up this segment with a reflection exercise. So I want you to imagine yourself a year from now, right? You have two separate paths. If you stick to the thing or if you quit it, which future would you rather have, right? Do you want to be in a future where you stuck with it, or do you want to be on the path where you quit, right? So every moment that you feel like you're ready to give up, I want you to think about that. Which path do you want for your future, and which future self do you want to become? So you are listening to Notes from Your Coach with Laura Nichols. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to explore more about resiliency, the resiliency it takes to dig in when we feel like giving up. So stay tuned, and we will be right back. All right, we are back on Notes from Your Coach with Laura Nichols, the queen of the pivot. And today we're talking about the reality of digging in when we are just not feeling it. The quote from the book this week is, "You've put too much work in to let up now." So this is one of 150 quotes in the book from Notes from Your Coach, which you can find on Amazon. But here's the secret. The next edition is actually coming out. And this one's going to have some commentary and some reflection questions and really a way to kind of make this into a 90-day journey of a pivot. So I'm really excited to share it with you guys and to just create more things to help you ignite your life. And if you're ready to dig a little deeper and a little further, I'm actually offering a special for the end of the year. Usually I work with my clients for 3 months or 12 weeks at a time. But because I was feeling like tired towards the end of the year and my clients were feeling the same way, I thought, I bet you there's a lot of other people feeling this way. Like they're just like, how do I finish this year strong? So I'm doing a 6 week package where you get to work with me for 6 weeks. We could do it 1 day a week or 2 days a week if you want, or 3. I don't care. The thing that I care is that you're committed to do the work. So there's only a couple of these packages available. I only have a little bit of room in my practice, but if you're interested, just head over to the website, notesfromyourcoach.com, and claim it. Or you can always just email me and let me know that you're interested, and we will go from there. So as we get back into this next part of the podcast, we're gonna shine a light on you and the progress you've already made, right? I think it's safe to say we all get really hyper focused on where we're not, right? What we haven't achieved. But when's the last time you really took a second look at the sheer distance that you've already covered? So let's dive into why celebrating those wins, big or small, it's not just a feel good thing, it's a key ingredient to the motivation and momentum, right? Here's the simple truth. You've already survived the hard parts. Seriously, I want you to think about it for a second. Go back to when you first started the journey that you're on, whether it's a weight loss journey or the start of a business or a relationship that has lately been struggling, right? Think back, right? A new job or even a project that you felt really fired up about, right? I want you to go back to the beginning. Do you remember those early challenges, the things that once seemed like really, really huge? You've already done it. You've already climbed them. You're standing here today where you are because you've made it through those hard things, right? That's massive. We're so dialed in on what's ahead of us sometimes that we forget to look back and see what we've already accomplished. But this idea of reflecting on that is so important. We see everything we haven't done and every goal we haven't checked off and every hill that's still ahead. But give yourself some credit. Look in the rearview mirror, right? Look at the journey behind you because there is where you find the proof that you are capable of so much more than you give yourself credit for. And I forget it too. It's not necessarily a habit for people, but reflecting on how far you've come isn't something that we're taught to do. It's powerful. It's a way to recognize the growth that's happening within you, even if you don't always see it. I want you to look at it this way. If you put in the work, faced your fears, stuck with something even when it got tough, you're not the same person that you are from when you first started. Maybe you've become a little bit braver, or maybe you've developed persistence that you didn't have before. I know for sure that you developed skills that you didn't have before, right? So growth is not about that final destination. It is about every single lesson that you have picked up on the way, every bit of progress that shifted you even slightly. Even when I think back to like who I was 2 years ago before I started my business, right? Like I am such a different person than I was now. People comment all the time, just people that I meet along the way, talking about my energy and how calming it is. And that is not how people used to describe me, right? Really, this journey of becoming a coach and owning a business has changed me as a person. And so I'm not the same person that I was 2 years ago. And it's really important to look back and reflect on that sort of thing. So let's talk about spotting these signs of progress, right? Even the ones that don't come with like the big flashing lights. Like we're conditioned to only notice the big wins, like getting a promotion or finally hitting some major fitness milestone or seeing some big payoff for our hard work. But what about the smaller wins? Did you stick to a new habit? Did you learn a new skill? Maybe you're finding yourself thinking differently or even making decisions with more confidence than you used to. Those are actually my favorite ways to know about the progress I've made. When I notice that my brain is working a little bit differently than it was, where I notice that I'm observing a feeling rather than just reacting to it. Those small wins might feel insignificant, but they really count for something, right? The small wins are the ones that lead to the big transformations over time. Progress doesn't have to feel loud or be loud. Sometimes it's those quiet moments, like finally feeling a bit more ease in situations that you used to dread, right? If you've been doing a lot of anxiety work or making changes a little faster because you've started to really trust yourself and you've gotten rid of that dialogue of somebody who is a quitter, right? They're subtle, but they're very powerful. They're proof that you're evolving. And even if the rest of the world doesn't notice, like when you notice, you know that you're making progress. So just because your progress doesn't come with applause or isn't like some big social media worthy post, it doesn't mean it isn't real. I want you to think of each small shift as part of a bigger picture. These little moments are the foundation of the larger transformation that you're building. So, this is the tricky part for a lot of people. Once you notice the progress, you also have to celebrate. We live in a world that conditions us to wait for others to notice our progress before we even give ourselves credit. Like, I like to tell the story of when I wrote my book, my first book. I did it as a gift to myself on my birthday last year. And I have a standing meeting with some other coaches. And I got on a meeting with them. It was like 2 days after I wrote the book. And we often did this thing where we talked about wins and like how things were going. And when it got to my turn, I think I talked about getting a new client or something. And the other coaches were like, Laura, you just put out a book. And I was so ready to just move on. I didn't even think about celebrating. So it's really important that we don't just rely on outside validation, right? If you do that, you're building your house on the shaky grounds. External validation is great, but it's just not reliable, right? Especially when you're talking about the little things that we're noticing. No one else is going to see the work you're putting in. No one else is in your head. No one else understands what your heart is saying. So no one's going to recognize those late nights or the battles you fought within yourself when you go to notice and get yourself up and say, you know what, I need to go outside for a walk, right? Or the effort you're putting in. Self celebration isn't just a nice to have. It's really necessary when you're coming up against feeling tired, feeling like you can't go on, right? I want you to think of each moment of self celebration as adding fuel to the journey, especially when you're tired. When you learn to celebrate yourself, you're building resilience from the inside out. You're creating an internal support system that's always there, no matter what, in all the circumstances, even when no one else is there. You're reminding yourself that you're moving forward. And that reminder can be exactly what you need to keep going when things start to get tougher. So let's make this interactive. Obviously, if you're driving, don't do this later. But if you're at home listening to this or in a place where you can, I want you to grab a piece of paper or even your phone, or you could make a mental note of it. So we're going to do a quick exercise. I want you to think of 3 things you've achieved in your journey. So if you're in a journey where you're feeling tired, so for me right now, it might be the last quarter of business, right? I want you to think about what has kept you going when you really wanted to quit, right? Maybe it's a skill you learned, or maybe it's a shift in mindset, right? Write these things down, right? What have you done? What are you proud of? What mindset shifts have you made? It's not about bragging, right? It's about taking stock of what you've done. Recording these wins, you're giving yourself something to look back on when things get tough. This is the fuel that you need when things are tiring. You're creating a reminder that you're moving forward, even if it's just one step at a time. So I just want you to remember that celebrating yourself, it's not this motivational hack, right? It's an honest acknowledgement of the hard work you've put in. When you pause to see how far you've come, you're not just looking back, you're building up the inner strength that you'll need to move forward. The journey isn't about where you're going. It's also about recognizing and honoring the strength and resilience and growth it took to get this far, because that is a reminder of who you are and how you've changed. Every step counts. Every moment that you've pushed through matters. And by stopping to acknowledge it, you're reminding yourself that you're capable, strong, and worthy of the progress that you're making. So keep those wins in mind, write them down, Use them as fuel. Remember that each small step is leading you toward the big goal. You are building the kind of inner confidence that you need to carry you all the way forward. This is the hard work, right? This is the part where it gets tough, especially if you grew up um, in a family or a society that really takes for granted everything that you do. You've been taught just to trudge along without celebrating yourself. And that is so important to do. I'm Laura Nichols, and you're listening to Notes from Your Coach. When we come back, we're going to talk more about how to stay on the course when we're just not feeling like it. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. All right, we are back on Notes from Your Coach with Laura Nichols, the queen of the pivot, and we are talking about how to find the motivation to stay the course when we are just not feeling like it. And I know a lot of people can relate to this. So this is where we have to dig deep, stay in the course. It's easy when things are going well. It's easy when it's a clear path and it's sunny outside and things are moving right along. But what about when things get tough? So now we're going to talk about what keeps us moving forward when giving up feels very, very tempting. So we're going to go into reconnecting with your why, the often overlooked power of consistency and the self-respect that comes to sticking it out. So let's get into it. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Your why. Why did you begin this journey that you're on? I want you to think about whatever journey you're on that you may be struggling with. I want you to go back to the moment you first set that goal or made that commitment or decided to start walking down this path. Do you remember the excitement, the spark of motivation, that like ignition that came from your why, the reason you decided this was worth doing in the first place, right? Life is life. And as life lives, that initial motivation fades over time. It just is not something that can stay forever. You get busy, setbacks happen, and suddenly the goal feels more like a chore than a calling. It starts to feel like an uphill climb, and you're left wondering, is this even really worth it? So, this is exactly when you need to connect with your why. Ask yourself, why did I start this in the first place? What what's truly at stake if I let go now, right? It's not about a warm fuzzy feeling, right? Like the why is not this shining bright light necessarily, right? It's your purpose. It's the thing that grounds you. It is your calling. It is the reason that you are here. So let's bring that purpose back to life. Okay, sometimes simply writing down your why is enough, right? Enough to reignite your drive. It's easy to forget how powerful it felt to start something with passion and purpose. If it was for a better future, maybe a personal dream, or even to help others, make that purpose real again. And here's the thing, sometimes the why shifts, right? Sometimes the why needs to change and go a little deeper, and it may change the trajectory a little bit, right? But I want you to imagine the satisfaction, the pride, and the freedom of knowing that you saw it through, that that why has been met. The vision that you created when you first started this journey is what is going to anchor you and hold you steady when the waves start to get rough. So that vision is really important. But let's talk about the grit, right? We're going to shift to the practical here. This is underrated, but it's one of my favorite things to talk about, and that's consistency. Because consistency is not glamorous. It's pretty boring. It's the get up and move every day, the little steps that you take. It's not the highlight reel of you standing on stage, right? It's the one foot in front of the other. It's the daily, repetitive efforts that build success over time. The people that are most successful are the ones who are the most consistent. Let's talk about the last time you set out to achieve something meaningful. Maybe it was getting in shape, learning a new skill, or saving up for something big. So none of these things are achieved in a single burst of effort. They are built on small, consistent actions repeated over time. And especially in this society where we want quick and easy, it can be really difficult to continue to do those things that are just the repetitive, non glamorous, non sparkly things that we have to do daily, right? It can feel so painfully slow, but those are the things that build one on another, right? Think about this. Going to the gym once does not change your body. But if you go every day for 6 months, or I would say 5, because you got to take a break, right? That's where the results come in. Each time you show up, you're adding a little bit more to this foundation. You're not going to see the immediate change, right? But it takes those moments every day of getting up and going that you're going to get the biggest change. I think the hardest part of consistency is often the beginning because progress can feel so invisible, right? You're just like investing. It's like investing money. It's the compounded growth that adds up over time. Imagine each effort as an investment in yourself. Show up each day, even when you don't feel like it. And soon enough, these results are going to speak for themselves. Consistency, it's the ultimate testament to patience and perseverance. It's not about massive leaps, it's about small steps every day that ultimately lead to exponential growth. So, when we're talking about consistency, the next piece we have to talk about is perseverance, right? It's not just about grit or sticking it out, but really perseverance is a form of self respect. It's about building that relationship with yourself. When you persevere, you're not just working towards a goal, you're honoring this version of yourself who made the commitment to start in the first place. You're choosing to push through when things get tough, to say to yourself, hey, I believe in you. I'm willing to show up for you even when it's hard. This isn't just about the outcome you're chasing here. It's about keeping your word to yourself. And that is honestly where the work lies. It's the most powerful thing. Integrity isn't just about being honest with others, it's also about being honest with yourself. And I would argue it's more about being honest with yourself than anything else. When you commit to something and you stick with it, you reinforce that self trust and showing yourself that your word has weight. This is why, with my clients, we usually start with micro goals, which are tiny, seemingly super easy things. And people have a lot of resistance to doing them because they want these big, shiny goals. But the idea behind a micro goal is that you are doing something that you know you're going to be successful at. And so the next week, when I talk to them, they're really excited because it's something they've been able to stick to. Something as small as, let's say, they want to be somebody who goes and works out every day. Well, typically a micro goal might be something like, you're going to get to the gym 1 day this week, right? And they're like, but I can do at least 3. Yeah, I know you can. Well, we're going to do that one because we're going to conquer that goal. And the whole idea is that you're building that relationship with yourself again. You're building that trust up because at some point you have sort of lost that trust in yourself. And we have to spend time building our relationships with ourselves back. So every time you choose to persevere or do that small step, you're strengthening that inner relationship. You're reminding yourself that what you want matters, right? It's what you want, and that's what's important. Your commitments matter. And then most importantly, you matter, right? It goes to that self-worth piece. Perseverance is a choice. Each time you make it, you're reinforcing that sense of respect and belief in yourself. So let's get introspective for a minute. I want you to consider something. What would I regret more? Pushing through or giving up, right? Obviously, we know the answer to that, but we're in the middle of a tough journey. The thought of quitting can seem really appealing because it takes the pressure off. It's a pause, right? But if you think about a year from now, which feeling would you rather carry, right? Would you rather carry the pride of sticking it out or the regret of wondering what could have happened if you had stayed the course? Sometimes when you frame it like this and you get out of this current moment and you really start to think about your past self who made this commitment and then your future self, whoever you want your future self to be, right? It's going to strengthen your resolve. So I really want you to take the time to think about it honestly, right? Allow it to inform your choices, right? It's not just about now, but it's about who you want to be in the future. So motivation and consistency, they're really two sides of the same coin, right? They're both essential for staying on course. When you reconnect with your why, you give yourself that motivation. You anchor yourself to the something bigger, right? The day-to-day struggles then seem smaller because you're back connected to the big. And then the other side of it is the small stuff, the consistency, the small steps, the things that are tangible that come slowly but surely. Listen, perseverance isn't easy. It takes grit, patience, and a lot of self belief. But remember that every day you stay committed to something, you're honoring your goals, you're building that relationship with yourself. So keeping going in your progress, no matter how slow, is very real. So you're persevering for yourself because that's where the real growth is and where real fulfillment begins. Now, I want to take a little spin on this because if you're somebody like me who's a parent, what you don't realize is that there are eyes watching you. At this point, my boys are teenagers and they don't give me a whole lot, right? Like they pretty much like to do their own thing. And so the moments with them are pretty precious. But when I hear my kids, few and far between, say things like, Mom, look at everything you're doing. Look at the business you're building. You have a podcast, you're an author, you have all these clients, right? There's other versions of you walking around watching. They have their own life, their own journeys, but you're informing the people who are around you as well. So while the most important thing is building this relationship with yourself, you're also putting the energy out there and teaching others around you, right? What it looks like to continue when it's tough. And that's also my plug for vulnerability. I think it's really important to share the hard moments when things get tough and how you're continuing to push through. And I'm not talking about not taking a pause. Sometimes you have to lay in bed for the day. Some days you need a break, right? And it's important to recognize that. I'm talking about making sure that you're in alignment and that this journey that you're on still goes with your values and your goals. And that's when you're still digging deep and consistently taking the steps that you need. So we're going to take another break. My name is Laura Nichols, the Queen of the Pivot, and you are listening to Notes from Your Coach podcast. When we return, we're going to get back into the nitty gritty, the real work, the how we do it. So stay tuned. All right, we are back on Notes from Your Coach, and now we're going to look at some practical tips for staying committed and avoiding the burnout. So, burnout's no joke. I've been there. A lot of my clients have experienced it. We've already talked about what happens when you've poured in the time, the energy, the late nights. And the last thing you really want is to lose momentum and get sidelined by burnout. So, this is where we're going to talk about building a system that helps you keep going strong, staying accountable, and avoiding that crash. So, let's dive in. Okay. So, first and foremost, this is like the most important piece of knowledge that I can impart. And that is that there's a myth, right? You don't have to go solo to succeed, right? We love the idea of a self made hero. But the truth is, no one is really succeeding alone, right? Like the people who meet the most success have accountability partners, they have mentors, or at least one friend who's rooting for them, right? These are the people who are your support crew. They help you stay accountable and keep your spirits up on days when you're just not feeling it. You know, if I didn't have a whole bunch of people who were rooting for me and sticking by me when I was having days where I was just like, what am I doing? I'm not sure I'd be where I am right now. It is so important to have a support system that has your back. You know, I always remember my dreams. Some people don't remember their dreams, but like I'm a dream girl. And the other night I had this dream where I was driving in the car with a friend. And this was the end of the dream. A lot of weird stuff had happened before, but in the dream, we're in a car and we're about to go on a road trip. And she puts her hand over to the middle. She's driving, I'm in the passenger seat, and she puts her hand over and grabs my hand. And I look at her and I'm like, why are you holding my hand? And she says, because it's a long journey and we all need someone to hold our hand on a long journey. And that's when I woke up from the dream. And I thought, what a beautiful symbol of this life and this experience, because we're experiencing this life as an individual, right? We have our individual experience and an individual journey, but the shared experience and the connectedness really is what gets us through the hard stuff when we want to give up, having those people who want to hold your hand and who want to be there for you. So we kind of we'll call it the lean and lift approach, right? A solid support system that gives you people to lean on when you're running low and to lift you when you need that extra push. And like you get to be that for them as well. It's not just one sided. You don't need a huge network. Even one or two reliable people can be game changers, right? Setting that regular check in. I have weekly check ins with my people to talk about progress, right? And they are other women who are also starting their businesses. So for us, it's really important because they have similar roadblocks, right? To talk through these things. So we get to talk about progress and roadblocks and what they're facing. And that's how we strategize adjustments that might need to happen. And these are the conversations that we focus or these are the goals that we focus our conversation on. We don't even necessarily meet in person. Most of these are online. I do have people that I meet in person with, but in this day and age, we're so used to being virtual. The whole point is staying connected. So you don't have to do that by being in the same physical space, right? This is the same reason that my yoga journey is done in a studio. I very rarely do yoga on my own in my house because having the energy and the support of people around me while I'm practicing yoga is so important to me. People's energy informs each other, right? Like it all gets mixed together. And that is why who you spend time with and who your support system is built from is so important. Because if you build a support system from people who either don't have compassion, can't understand what you're going through, or just really are disinterested, that's not going to be helpful for you. So finding out who is going to really stand there when you are not feeling it is super duper important. Let's talk a little bit about balance. So you're walking down this road, you have this really tough journey right ahead of you, full of goals, full of dreams, aligned with your values, you know where you want to go. And I envision it like walking down the middle of a highway, right? There's a balance between ambition and burnout. And staying on the right place is all about sort of setting the boundaries, right? Making sustainable progress while not shooting for perfection. So if you're constantly pushing without a break, like burnout's going to be inevitable. The reality is that you don't have to go fast, right? You can slow down, you can take pauses, you can take breathers, right? Rest isn't a sign of quitting, it's just taking a breath. It's like trudging up the mountain and taking a sip of water for a moment, right? This way, you have the energy to get you through the long haul. So, one of the best boundaries that you can set is by learning to say no, which I know can be really hard for a lot of people, right? It's important to stay focused on what really matters. And then when you say no to things, you're actually opening the door to the things you can say yes to, right? If these things if these things are not going to help you reach your goals and they're taking away time and energy from the things that you need to be doing for this journey, the answer is no, right? If this spontaneous social event or endless scrolling on your phone, right? You're not saying yes to progress at that point because you're saying yes to something else, right? So when you say no to those things, you're opening the door to say yes to the things that are really giving you what you need for this journey to be a thing. So one way to look at it is if it's not moving you forward, it's just in the way, right? So it's really important to carve out time blocks where you're just dedicated to that one thing. I'm not saying you can't scroll on your phone. I'm just saying for this hour right here, you are focused solely on X, Y, and Z and whatever it is, the thing that's moving you towards the goals. So it's like a dentist appointment, right? You're not going to miss it. You shouldn't miss it. You need to go. So one of those things that you can do is just the art of learning to say no. Um, you also need to rest, right? Like we're not working till we drop here. And this can be tricky. I think for myself, it's been difficult to sort of find a balance, right? Because I'm somebody who wants to push, push, push. So learning when I need to take breaks, when I need to rest, when I need to go outside and sit for 5 minutes, like that's been a really interesting journey for me in this process, right? Knowing when to rest is crucial for long-term success. So coming back from those breaks, you're going to feel re-energized. So for instance, let's liken it to somebody who goes to the gym a lot and lifts a lot of weights. If you don't have that rest day, your body doesn't have a chance to recharge. So I can always tell by the end of the week of my yoga practices, if I've done some really hard yoga practices in a row, by the end, like I don't have the same strength that I had, let's say Monday when I started. So I have to take a day where I'm just doing like a gentle yoga class, like a yin, because my muscles can't handle it and they need a break. It's no different than that with any other long journey that you're on. You have to be able to learn how to rest and what that looks like. And that is its own little mini journey in this. Here's another powerful strategy, right? And we talked a little bit about those before. This is what I do with my clients a lot. We break those big goals down into bite-sized, achievable goals. I like to call them micro goals, right? Big goals are exciting, but they can really feel overwhelming. If you've heard that saying, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? That's what we're talking about here. When a goal feels too large, it's easy to get overwhelmed by it. So if you think of each small step as a milestone, each little step is bringing you closer to the big picture, right? Setting small goals like daily or weekly that you know you can achieve keeps you moving forward. That's that small consistency that we were talking about earlier, right? Like if when I was writing my book, I had it in my head I was going to write X amount of words every day. Like there were days that I didn't feel like doing it, but keeping up with those small little goals is what ended up leading to the finishing of the book. It wasn't the writing of the book as a whole, it was the small things that I did every day to get that book written. So remember, we're going to reward ourselves, right? So celebrate those mini milestones. Don't forget, like, whether it's like treating yourself to something small. Sometimes it can be as simple as I'm going to text my person after this hour once I've done this thing, right? It doesn't have to be this huge reward, but the idea is really creating the longevity, the resiliency to work through this chunk of time and do these small steps. Celebrating needs to happen, right? It makes the process more enjoyable and keeps us really invested into it. So let's put this into practice with a quick challenge. I want each of you who's listening to come up with one small actionable goal for the week ahead based on whatever journey you're thinking of. When you think about being tired, when you're like, oof, I'm towards the end of this and I'm getting tired, like I'm talking about, think about that. Think about one small achievable or actionable goal, right? It should be something that you know you can accomplish. It's pretty easy. Your brain's going to want to tell you you should go for something bigger, right? But it can be really straightforward, like write down one new idea or contact someone who can hold me accountable, right? The bonus is writing it down. There's something really powerful about committing something to paper, or typing it out or putting it on your notes app on your phone. Writing it down, you're really making it, you're solidifying as a promise to yourself, right? And plus, then you have it to look back on, right? It keeps it real, keeps you focused. One step forward is enough to keep you moving. One step is a step you are still moving. It doesn't mean that you have to go full throttle every day, right? If you have a solid support system, a balance of energy, these micro goals, and a little bit of celebration along the way, it's going to help you stay on track without getting burned out. You're in this for the long game. So pacing yourself is really important because you're respecting your limits and you're honoring all the hard work you've already invested in this. So you're going to be keeping yourself steady. You're going to be keeping yourself balanced, and that's what's going to keep you going. The goal isn't just to finish, but to finish strong and proud and recognize who you've become in this journey. We're going to finish up with a short visualization. Okay. So if you're driving, don't do this, or you can do it while driving. Don't close your eyes though. Okay. If you can, close your eyes, settle in. So we're going to take a few deep breaths together. In and out, all the way to your belly. And then in and out again. All right. Now I want you to picture yourself weeks, months, or maybe even years from now, reaching the place where you've achieved this beautiful goal that you're working towards, right? I want you to feel the energy of that success. That is yours. That is your success. Visualize yourself as that person who didn't give up, that person who kept going, who put in the hard work and made it through every setback. I want you to see the look on your face. I want you to feel what the pride feels like, that sense of accomplishment. I want you to notice how light you feel, knowing that all your effort was worth it. How are you carrying yourself? Who's around you? What does it look like? Picture the people who are celebrating with you. They're all so proud of how far you've come, remembering the strength and the commitment that got you there. This version of you exists, right? Because of the small, consistent steps you took, even when things were tough, right? Lean into this. Who are you in this moment? All right, now bring yourself back to the awareness of the now and take a deep breath. And then if you have your eyes closed, open them. All right, my loves, thank you for sticking with me through this journey today. We've covered a whole heck of a lot. If there's one thing I want you to take away, I want you to remember this. Letting up now would be selling yourself short. You've already put in the hard work, the late nights, the energy. You owe it to yourself to keep going. Each step you take is building momentum and getting you closer to where you want to be. Here's my challenge to you. I want you to think of one area in your life where it's personal, professional, or a passion project where you felt tempted to give up. Just one. This week, I challenge you to take one deliberate step towards that goal. Again, just one. It doesn't have to be big. It can be small, just one step. Write it down. Write it down and commit it to yourself. Okay. As you step back into your human journey from this podcast, remember this week's unfiltered motivation from our episode. Remember to pivot boldly and live fully. Listen, you've got this. In case you need a reminder, you are a badass. Keep rocking it. And until next time, stay true, stay empowered, and stay resilient. And remember the power of the pivot. If you would like to contact me, you can go to my website, Notes from Your Coach. All my info is on the contact page, and you can sign up for my monthly newsletter there. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I had a wonderful time, as always. Join me every first and third Monday at 3 Eastern and 12 Pacific, and have a great week. I'll see you back here next time.
Always remember that you are your greatest asset. For more Notes from Your Coach with me, Queen of the Pivot, tune in every first and third Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. Each episode is chock full of unfiltered motivation to ignite your life and focuses on the tiny nugget of potent truth to empower you to take action and understand the power of the pivot. Share this show and share your journey using hashtag Notes from Your Coach. Subscribe and leave a review by visiting notesfromyourcoach.com.